The name Peaky Blinders evokes images of stylish gangsters in flat caps. They are seen as ruthless yet charming figures. The popular TV show has brought them to life for a new generation, but behind the myth lies a darker reality. The real Peaky Blinders roamed the streets of 19th century Birmingham. They were a product of their environment. Birmingham was a city of contrasts. It was a place of great industry and innovation, yet it was also a place of poverty and deprivation. The slums of Birmingham were home to the working class. These people struggled to survive. Crime became a way of life for some. The Peaky Blinders emerged from this world. They left their mark on Birmingham's history. The Peaky Blinders were not glamorous gangsters. They were criminals who preyed on the weak. Their story is a reminder of the dark side of progress. It is a story that still resonates today. Birmingham in the 19th century was a city of two tales. On one hand, it was a thriving centre of industry. It was known as the workshop of the world. New factories sprang up constantly. They produced goods that were in high demand. This industrial boom attracted workers from across the country. They came to Birmingham seeking a better life. However, the rapid growth of Birmingham came at a cost. The influx of workers led to overcrowding. The city's slums expanded rapidly. These slums were places of squalor and disease. Families lived crammed into tiny, run-down houses. Sanitation was poor. Disease spread quickly. Life expectancy in the slums was shockingly low. The working conditions in Birmingham's factories were often brutal. Workers toiled for long hours in dangerous conditions. They received low wages. Workplace accidents were common. The gap between the rich and the poor widened. The Peaky Blinders were not a single unified gang. They were a loose collection of smaller gangs. These gangs operated in different parts of Birmingham. They were often rivals. They fought for control of territory and criminal enterprises. However, they shared a common identity. They were all involved in petty crime. They were feared for their violence. While the Peaky Blinders are often romanticized, their crimes were far from glamorous. They engaged in petty theft, robbery, and assault. They were known to use intimidation and violence to get what they wanted. Their victims were often ordinary working-class people. These people were just trying to survive.
One of the most notorious Peaky Blinders was Thomas Gilbert. He was known as Kevins to his family. He was a tough and ruthless leader. He was involved in numerous violent incidents. Another key figure was Harry Fowler. He rose through the ranks to become one of the most powerful gangsters in Birmingham. These men were not heroes.
The name Peaky Blinders is now synonymous with Birmingham's gangsters. However, the origin of the name is shrouded in myth and speculation. The most common explanation is that the gang members stitched razor blades into the peaks of their caps. They would then use these caps as weapons. This image is certainly striking. It has been popularized by the TV show. However, there is little historical evidence to support it. It is more likely that the name Peaky Blinders was simply a slang term. It may have referred to the gang's distinctive clothing style. The Blinders wore peaked caps, which were fashionable at the time. They also wore other distinctive items. These items included tailored jackets, silk scarves, and bell-bottom trousers. Their clothing was a way for the Peaky Blinders to project an image of power and intimidation. It set them apart from the rest of society. It helped them to instill fear in their rivals and victims. Section 5, From Poverty to Power, the Rise of Birmingham's Gangs. The emergence of gangs like the Peaky Blinders was not a random occurrence. It was a direct result of the social and economic conditions in 19th century Birmingham. The city's rapid industrialization created a perfect storm for gang culture to thrive. The slums of Birmingham were breeding grounds for crime. Poverty, overcrowding, and lack of opportunity created a sense of hopelessness. Many young people felt they had no other option but to turn to crime. Gangs offered a sense of belonging and purpose. They provided a way to escape the drudgery of factory life. The Peaky Blinders exploited the weaknesses of their time. They ran protection rackets. They extorted money from businesses. They controlled illegal gambling rings. They thrived in the shadows of Birmingham's industrial growth. The police were often overwhelmed. They struggled to maintain order. The corrupting influence of gangs spread. Furthermore, the Peaky Blinders' violence was fueled by territorial disputes. Section 6. Fact versus fiction, separating the show from reality. The popular TV show Peaky Blinders has reignited interest in Birmingham's notorious gangs. While the show is entertaining, it is important to remember that it is a fictionalized account. It should not be mistaken for historical accuracy. The show portrays the Peaky Blinders as stylish and sophisticated gangsters. They run complex criminal empires. Their leader, Tommy Shelby, is a cunning and ambitious strategist. While this makes for compelling television, it is a far cry from the reality of gang life in 19th century Birmingham. In reality, the Peaky Blinders were involved in petty crime. They rarely engaged in elaborate schemes. Their violence, while real, was often brutal and impulsive. It lacked the strategic sophistication depicted in the show. The show also exaggerates the gang's longevity and influence. The Peaky Blinders were at their peak for a relatively short period. Section 7. The long arm of the law policing Birmingham's streets. The rise of gangs like the Peaky Blinders presented a significant challenge for law enforcement in Birmingham. The city's police force was often overwhelmed. They struggled to keep up with the growing problem of gang violence. However, they did make efforts to crack down on gang activity. One of the main challenges for the police was the Peaky Blinders' use of intimidation. Witnesses were often too afraid to come forward. This fear made it difficult for the police to gather evidence and secure convictions. The gang's knowledge of the city's backstreets and alleyways also gave them an advantage. They could disappear quickly after committing crimes.
To combat the Peaky Blinders, the police adopted new tactics. They increased patrols in known gang areas. They recruited more officers. They also worked to build relationships with local communities. They hoped to gain their trust and encourage them to report criminal activity. The Birmingham police force also benefited from advances in law enforcement.
Section 8. A city transformed. The legacy of the Peaky Blinders. The Peaky Blinders were a product of their time. They reflected the turbulent nature of 19th century Birmingham. As the city evolved, so too did its criminal underworld. The reign of the Peaky Blinders was relatively short-lived. By the early 20th century, they had largely faded from prominence. Several factors contributed to their decline. The police crackdown played a role. Improved social conditions also had an impact. As Birmingham prospered, opportunities for legitimate employment increased. This improvement reduced the allure of gang life. The Peaky Blinders were also weakened by internal conflicts. Rival gangs fought for control. These conflicts often turned violent. This violence weakened the gang as a whole. It made them vulnerable to law enforcement. While the Peaky Blinders eventually disappeared, they left a lasting legacy on Birmingham. Section 9. Enduring legends, why we remember the Peaky Blinders. The Peaky Blinders, despite their relatively short reign, have secured a prominent place in popular culture. Their story continues to fascinate and intrigue people around the world. This enduring appeal can be attributed to several factors. Firstly, the Peaky Blinders represent a world that is both familiar and exotic. They operated during a time of great social change. Their story offers a glimpse into the underbelly of Victorian England. This period holds a particular fascination for many. Secondly, the Peaky Blinders style is undeniably striking. Their distinctive clothing, particularly their peaked caps, has become iconic. This style has been embraced by fashion designers and artists. It adds to the gang's allure. Thirdly, the Peaky Blinders story is a classic underdog tale. They rose from the slums of Birmingham to challenge the established order. While their methods were criminal, their struggle resonated with many who felt marginalized and disenfranchised. Finally, the recent TV show has undoubtedly played a significant role in reviving interest in the Peaky Blinders. Section 10. Conclusion. The Peaky Blinders in history and memory. The Peaky Blinders were not romantic heroes. They were criminals who terrorized the streets of Birmingham. However, their story is more than just a tale of violence and lawlessness. It is a story about the complex social and economic forces that shaped 19th century England. The Peaky Blinders emerged from the slums of Birmingham. They were a product of poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity. Their story is a reminder of the human cost of industrialization. It is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked progress. Despite their crimes, the Peaky Blinders have become cultural icons. Their story continues to fascinate. It has been romanticized in popular culture. This fascination speaks to our enduring interest in the underbelly of society. It also highlights our fascination with stories of rebellion and resistance. The Peaky Blinders' legacy is complex and multifaceted. They remind us that progress often comes at a cost.